believe we're supposed to say, or I'm supposed to say, good Tuesday afternoon to all of you. Welcome into the Chico Borman Show and the Bold Bald Breakdown with myself and Nick Shook here on the Big Play Sports Network. But I don't know. Is it a good afternoon?
I mean, technically it is an afternoon. I don't know about. It's definitely not good.
It's definitely not good.
The weather's all right. We'll take that.
Yeah, we can't sugarcoat it. Like, this is one of those where we're not going to try to sell something that isn't there. Because I think deep down, as objective as we try to be, Nick, on the Bold Bald Breakdown, as objective as we try to be, and I think we are, there is somewhere deep down that fan in us, that Clevelander, that Northeast Ohioer that says, not again. You know, like I think people across the country, when they hear about the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride, this is what we're referring to. And it's not even, wow, you lost to the Steelers after, but I mean, think about the show we did last week. Our debut show for the Bold Bald Breakdown. They looked great defensively, looked great against Cincinnati, had to get a few things straightened out offensively. And, well, hey, bring on the Steelers and Pickett and company reeling from San Francisco. And now it's not, like, really the loss to the Steelers feels secondary, and I can't believe I'm saying that. But it's true. The loss last night to the Steelers feels secondary to the idea that Nick Chubb, one of the best football players to ever wear orange and brown and easily one of the most popular players to ever wear orange and brown, is most likely done for this season.
Yeah, last week we were flying high. Expectations couldn't be higher. The optimism overflow, right? I mean, if this defense plays this well every week, they could win every game. And it felt like that. I mean, it was a strange game last night in Pittsburgh, bottom line, right? The first play is a pick six because it glanced off the hands of Harrison Bryant. Crazy things are happening left and right. But then the Browns start to settle in. They start to get their offensive attack going by relying on Nick Chubb. Surprise, surprise. Until he's gone. And I think if it wasn't a player of Chubb's caliber and a player who is so respected like Chubb is, it probably wouldn't have made such an impact. It could have been anybody else. It should have been anybody else. It shouldn't have been Nick Chubb, and it took the air out of it. There was still a game to play, and I give the Browns credit for kind of picking up the pieces and playing that game to the end. Obviously, we'll get into why they didn't win that game. But yeah, absolutely, because there's two situations or two scenarios that could have played out last night. They could have hung on to a 22-19 lead and won the game, and you'd still be like, man, we lost Chubb, but at least the Browns are 2-0. But they lost Chubb, and they lost to the Steelers in traditionally and typically epic fashion, in which the Browns so often do. And now you're left wondering, is there any reason for hope? I mean, it sounds crazy because it is only week 2. And at this time last year, you thought, well, the Browns are 1-1 and should be 2-0, but they blew that game to the Jets with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. But now you're thinking the number one guy that you can rely on, the thing that makes you feel safe at night and helps you sleep all cozy in your bed, even as the seasons change, is now gone. And there's nowhere else to turn, and that is not good.
Okay, we'll get you hit the nail on the head there a minute ago when you said, hey, there's still 90% of the season.
Yeah.
We have 15 more games to go. And, there's pieces to pick up and things we need to talk about from this game. But I'll start it off by saying this, by asking you this. How concerned are you for the Browns' rest of the season? Even though, you still have 15 more games. Your defense, let's not take away, the defense still looks great, and it's still going to be a very good football team. But this isn't just, as you mentioned, Nick, and articulated very well, this isn't just your average, ordinary loss. This is a loss to the Steelers, but it's losing Nick Chubb for the entire year, we think. And how do you play out the rest of the season?
So, I mean, I think back to when the schedule was released, and you look at the Browns' schedule, and you think, well, that's a tough first month. They're setting them up for failure right out of the gate. If they come out of there 0-4, 1-3, it's going to be a bad scene in Cleveland. Now, you're 1-1 right now, and you're playing a Tennessee Titans team that a week ago looked pretty bad, came back and was able to win the game against the Chargers this past weekend. But frankly, I have no idea how to even look at the upcoming week for the Browns, let alone the rest of the season, because I don't know what this offense is going to be. Because without Nick Chubb, you are putting most of the pressure on Deshaun Watson, who, by all accounts, is nowhere near where he should be at this point or what you expected him to be as an elite quarterback. So when you look at the rest of the season, I guess you look at it by that month-by-month capsule, right? You got Tennessee this week. You got to play Baltimore the following week. The good thing is both games are at home. You don't have to deal with Renegade in the fourth quarter because you're going to be playing in the comfy confines of Cleveland Browns Stadium along the lakefront here. But then you go into an early bye. Maybe this is probably the first time in history in which an early bye might benefit a team, depending on how these next 2 weeks go. And then you get into a stretch where you play a San Francisco team that looks primed to contend for the NFC title right now. That's not going to be easy, but you are going to have the extra week to prepare. Then you get the Indianapolis Colts. Then you get Seattle, Arizona, Baltimore. It becomes a marathon, right? I don't know how you approach that marathon.
West, and then you got, that's.
I don't know how you approach that marathon without Nick Chubb in that backfield. That's just my take. I think you give Jerome Ford a lot of credit for what he did, and I know I'm getting a little deep in the weeds here early on in the show.
That's okay.
But at the same time, you have to feel so less confident in what the Browns bring to the table offensively. The funny thing is, and my best friend, longtime best friend, who is absolutely heartbroken over what happened to Nick Chubb last night. I was texting him just before the show. I told him one thing that I think is probably going to resonate, and a lot of Browns fans are going to come to realize this. Your defense is good enough to keep you in every game, which is good because that means you have a shot to win every game, or most games. But it's also bad because it's going to make every loss that much more painful because it's going to be close.
He's Nick Shook. I'm Mike Chico Borman. The show is called the Bold Bald Breakdown. It is week 2, and if you're tuning in and you said, wow, last week those guys were having and we are having fun. I mean, hey, it's still football, it's sports. I think the important thing is here, I like to say I'm genuine. I know Nick, knowing him for a while, is genuine, and I'm not going to pretend like there's, we have this great topic to talk about and we want to get reaction. It's a downer. I mean, it is an absolute downer. Now, as far as the running back position goes, because there's a lot of folks out there, okay, where do we go from here? If the news is what we all anticipate, that Nick Chubb is done for the season, is it, okay, Jerome Ford and
Pierre
Strong. Do you bring up John Kelly from the practice squad, or people are on Twitter? Well, Jonathan Taylor's out there. I have no idea what. So what do you think the Browns and Andrew Berry specifically is thinking about and will ultimately decide upon?
I'm going to attack this in reverse order because the first text I got immediately after Nick Chubb got hurt and it became clear that it was serious were, all right, what do the Browns have to do to get Jonathan Taylor? And I responded with one word: stop. Because there's multiple reasons why this is somewhat unrealistic. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that they're not going to kick the tires on him. But number one, Jonathan Taylor's on PUP, physically unable to perform list, for 2 more weeks, okay? He's not going to be able to play until week 5. Number 2, you've lost all of your leverage in negotiations. The reason that the Colts couldn't trade Jonathan Taylor before the start of the season was because they were asking for too much. Well, guess what? The Browns are now a team that's desperate for a running back, potentially. Yeah. Guess who can get a lot from? The Browns. And guess who also doesn't have a lot of draft capital? The Browns. So let's kind of set that aside. We'll monitor it, but we're not going to, put all your hopes and dreams on the idea that they're going to acquire Jonathan Taylor and everything's just going to be fine. Jonathan Taylor also, by the way, a guy who did not play a full season last year because of injuries and is on PUP because of lingering effects from an off-season surgery.
Yeah, we don't know what kind of condition he's in.
Yeah, it's not surefire. And obviously there's other stuff that's going on between him and ownership in Indianapolis that are affecting it, but I'm just telling you right now, slow yourself on that a little bit. Pump the brakes. Now, as for the players that are on the roster, yes, your lead back is Jerome Ford, who, statistically looked like he had a nice night. 69 of those yards came on 1 run. So let's, be a little bit tempered with that. You give him credit for trying to suddenly man, the position, carry the load in such an unfortunate and unexpected spot. But is he a guy that you can rely on like Nick Chubb? No, he's not. You're going to have to committee backfield this thing. Luckily, committee backfields are all the rage, and I thought Andrew Berry made a savvy move by picking up Pierre Strong earlier this year because I think he's a speed back that you were missing in that backfield. You also have the likes of John Kelly, who I think he's a preseason hero, but I think you're going to have to bring somebody up. So it's we'll see who else they have on that roster that could probably do something. And help them out, but there's definitely going to be a move needed to be made because there's no reason you should be running Pierre Strong twice between the tackles and the goal line except for the fact that you don't have anybody else because Jerome Ford's on the sideline because he's tired and maybe a little dinged up. So See that look of depression right there? It's bleak, but it's not lost.
You walked in, again, full disclosure, peek behind the curtain. So obviously there was some filming going on when I got here earlier this morning. And I was sitting out in the lobby area, and I didn't see you walk in or hear you walk in. So you walk in
like that,
our
like a cat.
studios. Yeah, you are, a little mouse there. And so obviously we're here at Burke Lakefront Airport. You walk in, and the first thing you said to me, and first time I even see you this morning, you go, "Oh man, that's a look at it." Like, I was slouched in my seat. One of the airport employees, John, walked by, and like you said to me, you're like, "Well, if that's not the look of, depression or look of just down, it's what it felt like." I mean, it is what it feels like.
I woke up this morning and I was like, "Did that really happen?" I get a text from a buddy, and he's like, "Did I not just go on a bad trip last night? Like, am I sure that really happened? Is that really the world we're waking up to today?" I just drove by the stadium, first, second banner in from the left, Nick Chubb, and I'm just driving by thinking, it was like that Enya song, "Who can say where the road goes?" I had that playing in my head. It was sad.
Boom, I've heard that song. You don't believe that, but I have heard that song.
Yeah, Fountains of Wayne.
Yeah, I absolutely know that. All right, so again, the Bold Ball Breakdown. Mike Chico Borman, Nick Shook is joining us. He's with NFL.com, NFL Network, and of course, we're going to get to next week's game. We got the Tennessee Titans on the slate, which right now seems like 3,000 miles away, because it really is. But one last thing on the running back position. And I can't help but think of this, because the narrative, we talked about it in the offseason with, running backs wanting to get paid, not getting their contract, whatever. Now Chubb had signed 3 years, $36 million. And so, I mean, he got and well-deserved payday. But like Saquon Barkley, remember that? He was, he was upset. He comes back. He's going to be out maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Josh Jacobs had no yards rushing?
-2 on 9 carries.
So I hate to say it, but like the narrative that we were talking about this offseason with running backs kind of played out last week, or this past weekend. And it kills me to say that, pains me to say that with Nick Chubb. But I mean, you can hear general managers and others in the front offices going, see, this is why we do that. Not that it's fair, but that's why they do that.
I think a great example of that is what the Atlanta Falcons did over the weekend against the Green Bay Packers. Tyler Algier, not Bijan Robinson, is the guy in that offense right now. It's committee backfield season. It's committee backfield era. That's the thing, right? I'm in my blank era. The NFL's in its committee backfield era, for sure. And it's working for most teams. It's just that the Browns happen to have such a good player, such an elite player, that they were able to not do that. The thing we have not tackled yet, and maybe this is on your rundown.
It's coming next.
There's a guy out there.
Well,
no, I'm saying there's a guy out there.
Oh, okay.
Because the Browns tried to committee backfield with star power in the past, and it didn't work out. So much that the other guy won it out.
Is he a Northeast Ohio native?
Oh, he is a Northeast Ohio native.
Willoughby South Rebel?
Perhaps he is.
Okay, let me ask you this, Nick, because and we've all been kind of wondering about it, but with everything going on, getting ready for the season, we didn't really get into it. There was no need to get into it. Why do you think Kareem Hunt has not been signed by anybody, including the Browns? And really, I mean, I know what we just got done saying about running backs, but it just seems odd that nobody's even kicking the tires on the guy that we know of.
He had some workouts. He had a few workouts just before the start of the season, and nothing materialized. This was right around the same time when Ezekiel Elliott had signed with the Patriots, and when the Jets and Dalvin Cook were taking forever to get their deal done. So it wasn't completely strange. It's just strange that he's still not with the team. But if he's a local guy and if he's in shape, I fully expect somebody to make that phone call, because the biggest reason Kareem Hunt wanted out of Cleveland was because he wasn't getting the touches and the looks that he wanted. He wasn't getting the carries, the time on the field that he expected in this offense, because he's stuck behind a guy like Nick Chubb.
Is there any bad blood, do you think, now? Or
there's probably some. I'm sure there's some.
Okay.
But I don't think that would necessarily prevent that from happening now that the Browns are in a spot where, look, man, they're up a creek without a paddle. They need an answer right now, because Jerome Ford, as much as you can give him credit for what he did last night, is still a young guy who's unproven. You need somebody else to balance out that backfield. I cannot fully believe that they're going to play the next 3 weeks with Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. Like, you could, and maybe it works out, but based on the way their quarterback is playing right now, I cannot fully feel confident that Andrew Berry's going to look at that roster and think that's good enough without at least making a phone call to a guy like Kareem Hunt.
So you mentioned the quarterback, and that's where I want to go right now. On the,
do we have to?
Bald breakdown. Yes, we do. Mike Chico Borman, Nick Shook with NFL.com and NFL Network. Deshaun Watson is a guy that, he's had some very good moments in the NFL, 2020. He's had some very bad moments in the NFL. Last year for 6 games, really 2 games so far this year. I guess, do we start with saying, is this something that I asked you the same question last week, but again, I have to ask it. Is this something that just figures itself out? He figures it out. Time is going to take care of everything, or are we more concerned? Are you more concerned as we watch more and more action from Deshaun Watson?
This may be interpreted as immediate overreaction, and I acknowledge that.
Plenty of that today, by the way.
But okay. I think that I have been one of the guys who's been the most patient with Deshaun Watson to this point. I understand that it's hard to take a year and a half off of football and suddenly you just rediscover elite form. It doesn't happen, right?
Right.
It didn't happen in the middle of a season last year. But my problem is there's no more excuses. You had an opportunity to lead your team to victory last night. Nick Chubb was out. That security blanket was gone, but you had multiple chances to either salt away a win or go get a win, and he just didn't do it. And my problem with Watson right now in this offense is him and Kevin Stefanski are not on the same page. They clearly don't know how to work together. Now, I don't know if it's not a communication thing. I don't know what it is, but Kevin Stefanski, who oftentimes gets too cute, we just point to one 4th and short play call last night where they tried to run an option.
Not to interrupt you, but I thought the full off season.
Oh, we're gonna open it up. It's 5 wide.
Was going to take. I mean, didn't Deshaun Watson before the Cincinnati game? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he say he used the word? I'm not using this word. He used the word fireworks.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to say, "Don't take it out on Deshaun." You're upset that Nick Chubb went down, and some of that's fair. Kind of gain a little perspective here. But I'm sorry, he is a quarterback that is supposedly, one of the best in the league, or you're paying him as such, and he's not showing any signs of being that guy. Let's not, we can't, he made a good sideline throw to Elijah Moore. He had a couple throws where you're like, oh, wow, that's, but yeah, that's what a good quarterback will do. Elite quarterbacks, great quarterbacks who are paid $230 million guaranteed do that consistently. And like you said, and you raise a great point, is last year I was fine with that. Last year I was fine with, not fine, but you understood it. Too many people thought he went into the phone booth, changed into the Superman cape, came out 500. It doesn't work that way in the NFL. But now, let's be honest, we're a little concerned, and now very concerned because 24 is most likely done for the year.
Oh, he's definitely done. I had an interesting
Still holding
point.
Out hope.
No, don't give up hope. It's
All
easier
right.
to accept it.
Thank you. Said by a true Northeast Ohio guy.
Take the leap.
Give up hope.
While you can. I had an interesting comment kind of made to me, and an idea tossed out there last night when I was doing a little Twitch stream after the game, and that was, too many people watch highlights and base their judgments off of highlights. And if there's a highlight star, it's Deshaun Watson. Now, when he was in Houston, he was electric. Oftentimes, you don't just rise to that reputation without having some substance behind it. But I remember back when they were struggling a little bit offensively, and I tried to figure out why. And their offensive line wasn't very good. It was like pre-Laramie Tunsil time. They didn't have a left tackle that could be relied on with this team. And oftentimes, because of the pressure, he was too... he just didn't feel comfortable, and you could see him to where he'd pull his eyes down very quickly and bail out of the pocket. Clean pockets, ran out of clean pockets all the time in Houston, especially early in his career. That's what I'm seeing right now, and a lot of that is because Jed Wills isn't protecting his blind side, or he's just not feeling like he trusts that offensive line. And the Steelers recognized that in the fourth quarter of that game in the most important possession. They said, forget it. We're just going to blitz. We're just going to send a million rushers after him and dare him to make a play. And, of course, he didn't. He's not comfortable in that offense. Another part of that is I don't think the processing is still quick enough. If his first read's not there, he's taking a little bit too long to get from 1 to 2 to 3. And even his ability to extend the play, it showed up at times, but it's also not consistent enough. Now, that speaks to me a little bit of a lack of proper usage, and it also is somebody who You could say he's still shaking off the rust. I am now officially concerned whether he'll ever actually rediscover that form. I'm not sold that he will, because you've had now 8 games, and I've seen no improvement. You can't blame it on the weather this week. There's little glimpses of good. There's the throw to Elijah Moore. There's a throw to Amari Cooper down the field or down the sideline. Great back shoulder throw. Amari Cooper makes a great catch. Makes another great catch on that drive. Glimpses of good, but way too much bad. And if you expect this team to contend right now, and especially without Nick Chubb, that's a problem. That's a problem when you're paying that guy that kind of money, because you can't get out of this. If this is bad and it continues to be bad, you cannot get out of this. You have attached yourself to this guy. So either figure out how to work together better, or I don't know. I don't know what the alternative is right now. That's pretty much the only option for them to be good.
So we did a thing, started last week on the Bold Ball Breakdown, Numbers That Matter. So I'm going to kind of maybe steal one and maybe spoil it for everybody, but I think it speaks to your point. In your write-up for NFL.com, and you do the what we learned and talking about all the games, and it's outstanding, and you were breaking down this one. And you mentioned how, correct me if I'm wrong, last in the league as far as percentage with passes under pressure. And
yeah, the stat that was delivered to me via Next Gen Stats.
I'm getting upset.
The number that mattered was 3. He completed 3 of just 11 pass attempts while under pressure against the Steelers in Week 2. He's completed just 7 of 22 under pressure this season. His completion percentage over expected, which really should be under expected when it's a negative number. That's a completion that is not anticipated to be made based on the algorithm that Next Gen Stats produces, right? A lot of different factors come in: positioning, speed, all these different things. Tight window, not tight window. His completion percentage over expected is negative 26.7. It's the worst in the league. So this is a guy who's supposed to be a playmaker and can improvise and get away from pressure and make throws on the run and all that stuff. He's not doing it. He's not doing it well. Not to mention the fact that he's not hitting guys downfield, even with clean pockets. There's a lot of bad right now. Way too much bad.
So if we're talking about pressure, and you define pressure as the tight window, pressure coming from the defense, and pressure, but I think it's fair to say, all right, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here, but I think it's fair to say that if I'm a defense, starting with Mike Vrabel, who knows defense pretty well with the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, teams moving forward, well, without Nick Chubb, yeah, we're gonna put that pressure on him, and so far he has not shown since he's been a Cleveland Brown. And again, last year I'm willing to give him a pass. But since being a Cleveland Brown, only 2 games into this season, pressure situations have already come up. He hasn't delivered. If you don't think there are more pressure situations coming with the inevitability that Nick Chubb is out, that's what scares me, Nick, is that now defenses and defensive coordinators worth any kind of money are saying, well, this one's obvious. I mean, we're going to, let's bring it. And how does he answer that pressure?
So
hopefully not dropping his eyes and.
That's kind of what he's been doing a lot of. It's kind of his go-to move. Even there was a couple. I think I was messaging with a colleague last night where he's like, God, he pulls his eyes down and tries to bail out so fast, too often. That's a problem. But this kind of takes me back to a conversation I had with a few of Joe Thomas's former players this summer when I was writing an oral history on him. I promise this will relate. They were talking about how good Joe Thomas was against pass rushers, some of the most elite pass rushers in the NFL in his era. Because they were in Pittsburgh, it was James Harrison. They were in Baltimore, it was Terrell Suggs. You can continue to go down the list. Joe was so good, but he was even better because the Browns never had a running game to keep that defense honest. They could pin their ears back all day, and yet he rarely gave up sacks. Jedrick Wills is not Joe Thomas. And you saw the Steelers' lack of respect for him last night when they said, well, all right, we figured it out. We can probably stop them right now just by sending the house at him, because he doesn't get out in time. He doesn't see it before the snap. They can telegraph blitzes. He's not seeing it before the snap. You can fix a lot of this. A lot of this can be fixed in film study and reps and everything else. But I felt like when I was watching him throw last night, whether it was under pressure or not, like he needs more reps that are not on air in practice, because the contested catches and the tight windows and everything, it's like he just doesn't have enough reps seeing those. He's not on target. Not only is he not playing well under pressure, but he's not on target when he's not pressured. A lot of bad, a little bit of good, too much bad.
Is there a way that Kevin Stefanski Because
don't get me started on
he's
this.
a part of this too. Oh. Touchy subject. Is there a way that Kevin Stefanski can make life easier for Deshaun? And I'm not saying like go vanilla where it's, but what can Kevin Stefanski do? You're watching all the film and looking at this stuff. I don't think it's any secret. I've said it. I think you've said it. A lot of people have said it. He has a great offensive mind, but sometimes you get a little too cute. Sometimes you try to get you outthink yourself. He may have done that last night, and it may be something that Kevin Stefanski is prone to doing since becoming head coach of this team, certainly over the last couple of years. Is there a way that he can scale that back?
He tried to do it early in the game, actually. The pick six was an attempt to do this. They go 5 wide, and then they throw a quick out to Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, good hands, by the way.
And that was a miscommunication, by the way, because Bryant should not have sat down on that route based on where Watson threw it, unless it was an errant ball. We'll never fully know, but I think that's probably what happened. He can kind of soften a defense with quick completions. He ran 2 tight end screens last night. The first one I wholeheartedly disagreed with, both for timing and just situational play calling. But the second one produced a pretty big gain, David Njoku, which helped them out and get down the field. You can do these types of things. And maybe, you use Pierre Strong as more of a pass-catching back out of the backfield because he's a very fast guy. He could be that weapon. But what you have to be is you have to avoid being predictable, and you have to avoid trying to get too cute. He often calls plays, in my opinion, as somebody who is the smartest guy in the room, knows he's the smartest guy in the room, but also needs to let you know every once in a while that he's the smartest guy in the room. It's almost like he's outsmarting himself.
Would the option with a yard to gain, the Deshaun Watson, turn into
that's a great example.
Qualify?
That's a fantastic example. It's 4th and 1, and everybody's anticipating the sneak, and you run an option. And I panicked as I saw the play unfolding. I was
that's one way.
I shouted at the screen. I was like, "Oh, you're running this now?" Now, they didn't get that first down. They initially did, and it was overturned on review because Watson had the ball punched out, which, by the way, the Steelers did a great job of that last night. Hat tip to them, man.
Yep.
Opportunistic defense, which they've been for a long time. But you don't need to get that complicated. And the other disappointing thing to me is that you want to go back and talk about preseason talk and the discussion surrounding this offense. Elijah Moore was a camp hero. He was used in a number of different scenarios. He was jet sweep guy. Well, he was invisible for a little bit of last night. He had 3 catches that all didn't count because he only got 1 foot down. He'd have had a hell of a game at Ole Miss.
Maybe he can go permanently in the backfield if he's that good in the backfield. Remember,
you can do a Debo package with him like the 49ers do. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in this offense that's being untapped, and I think a lot of the time it is the coach getting in his own way by trying too hard. And the problem now is you don't have Nick Chubb to rely on to kind of balance that out. I know we sound very repetitive with this, but it's going to be a persistent issue until it's not. And there's still 16 weeks left. So you got to figure this out, before long. You don't want to bury yourself in a hole in a division that's going to be really tough throughout the year.
I'm thinking about lack of a running game, or certainly a decline in what you can bring to the table with your running game. No disrespect to Jerome Ford. Along with question at the tackle position, and honestly more question about the veteran on the left side than DeJuan Jones on the right side. Now, he's still going to go through his the learning curve, and there's going to be, obstacles along the way, but it's starting in 1 week. And this, I can't wrap my mind around this. Like I said, this is going to be a very, wearing emotions on our sleeve type show today. I can't wrap my mind around as long as I've been in Cleveland and been a Cleveland fan since I was born, basically, we should be used to this, but I can't wrap my mind around feeling so good, so great after a Cincinnati game. And even for somebody that would, I don't know about. No, you know what? Feel good. And then all of a sudden, poof. And that's how it happens. And now, it's the combination of, we lose Nick Chubb, but we also have a tackle problem. We can't sugarcoat that either, as we're maybe trying to sugarcoat Deshaun Watson you're not, maybe he just needs a little more time. And I know I've said that. I'm trying to make myself believe that. We can't sugarcoat the idea that there is a tackle issue, one, because of injury. Okay, that happens. One, because Jed Wills, you just can't trust him. I know we went through this with a kicker in Cade York, but I can't trust Jed Wills week to week. I can't.
Yeah, the kicker missed a field goal last night too, but that's neither here nor there. This is why I looked back at last year. I remember at this time, award season in the NFL last year, where I'm looking at all pros for left tackles or who should be going to the Pro Bowl, and I think it was somebody at ESPN listed Jed Wills as like an honorable mention, and I was like, what? This is how I know that people don't closely watch offensive line play as well as they should, because there is in no world should he have been considered for an award last year. This is a guy who you just can't count on, and for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, who does not trust his offensive line's ability to block, and often doesn't escape properly either, by the way. Senses rush from around the right, and instead of bailing out of the open lane to the right, he runs right into the rush on the left. Like, it's ugly when he's trying to navigate the pocket sometimes. That's bad. But to your point about feeling so good last week, and suddenly you're at this stage now where it's like, what is the reason for hope? I got a text from a best friend this morning. A lot of people really going through it in personal discussions. He said, less than 24 hours ago, I thought we had a shot at the playoffs. Now I feel like we're maybe a 500 team going into a rebuild. That is the impact of the loss of Nick Chubb. Like, this team has a lot of talent, but
I'm laughing so I don't cry, by the way. Just so everybody knows, I'm laughing so I don't cry.
Yeah.
All right, it is the Bold Ball Breakdown. Mike Chico Borman, Nick Shook. We're going to do this. We do this every Tuesday. Win, lose, or draw. Last week, it was a lot of fun. This week, not so much. But here's the good news, okay? Yeah, there are still 15 games left to play. All right, let's shift to the good news. I'm going to...
Okay.
Nick, what can fans feel good about? I mean, my gosh, there are still 15 games to play. You do still have guys like Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, hopefully healthy, and a secondary, and I know they're banged up a little bit too, but there's got to be some things that fans, despite this doom and gloom Tuesday, can grasp onto and go, you know what? I feel pretty damn good about that. What is that?
I got to give a lot of credit to Andrew Berry for how he approached the offseason with the defensive front. A year ago, they came to realize rather quickly that it was not good enough, and they approached it with an aggressive, attack on how to make this group better. Like, flat out make this group better. Combination of veterans, guys that have been cast off somewhere else who still have potential. It all shined last night. Maurice Hurst, man, looked great last night. That's a guy who came in from Michigan to the Raiders. He probably would have been a first-round pick, but he had a heart issue that dropped him a little bit. He spent last year with the 49ers. Big addition. Dalvin Tomlinson making a difference. Shelby Harris did the old Mutombo swat of a Kenny Pickett pass. They made a difference on the interior. There's a reason the Steelers couldn't run the ball. There's a reason the Steelers couldn't move the ball, which is why the loss is so frustrating to Browns fans. But they made a difference. You know what you have in Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. Obo Okoronkwo looks really good as well. Yeah. This is a really good group. That front is solid, and it fits Jim Schwartz's approach perfectly. Your linebackers are playing good ball. Sione Takitaki made a great sack in a key moment in that game last night. JOK was all over the field. I thought he had a fantastic game.
Good point.
I don't know what his PFF grade's going to be. Frankly, I really don't care that much because I was impressed enough by that game. Grant Delpit had a pick. Your corners played pretty well until they both suddenly got hurt. For the most part, other than the blown coverage where Denzel Ward tried to hand off to somebody in the interior and nobody was there, and George Pickens, there he goes, still running for a touchdown. They had a good game. This is a good defense, okay? And by the way, DeJuan Jones, despite the fact that he gave up the sack to TJ Watt that put him in the record books, and of course that blows up on social media, which is natural. You earned that, TJ. Congratulations. DeJuan Jones did a pretty good job against him.
Yeah.
He's a solid right tackle. We talk about how they don't trust the left tackle, but the right tackle is looking pretty good. So considering that you lost Jack Conklin to injury last week, which we did talk about, but in the narrative kind of was swept under the rug because Nick Chubb just, is such an outsized injury compared to that. You have a nice replacement there. And I think Browns fans should feel really good about him going forward. Okay,
so before we get numbers that matter and go around the league a little bit, was there another game this weekend besides the Browns Steelers? I don't know. I can't even think about that right now, but we will. Before we get to that, Tennessee Titans are on deck. And before we say, you know what, that should be a W, and, it's Mike Vrabel. They're going to come in. They're going to be physical. They're going to Derrick Henry. We talk about the additions up front, and I said this yesterday on the air before, in the preview show before that game against the Steelers, that the Steelers, keep in mind, going into last night, they never had a chance to even try their running game because they were down 20-0 in the blink of an eye.
They have a running back controversy, by the way.
Jalen Warren.
Warren's
and
better
you wrote
than
about
Najee
that.
Harris.
Great point. But they didn't even attempt to do that in week 1. Tried to in week 2. They've got some, but we're going to see. I mean, Derrick Henry next week. You've got Baltimore. I know no J.K. Dobbins, but man, Baltimore still looked physical against Cincinnati. When we look at the Tennessee Titans at a glance for this week 3 matchup at home, 1-1 Cleveland Browns, what stands out to you?
Well, I do want to explain my brief laugh just because this morning I'm
funny.
I know. I mean,
Very
with a face like that.
Absolutely.
No. I was washing the dishes this morning, and I started to think to myself, this wouldn't be a bad situation for the Browns if they had a backfield like Baltimore's. Like, if they had a Gus Edwards, you'd be like, all right, I feel pretty good about this. They don't. If they had a Justice Hill, I'd feel pretty good about it. They don't. Now, in a vacuum, are those guys really all that much different? I don't know. It could be offensive system, but it just made me laugh about that. The Titans, meanwhile, I've watched 2 Titans games through 2 weeks, and they have been vastly different games because Ryan Tannehill was a disaster in week 1 against a good Saints defense. He was much better in week 2 against the Chargers defense that has now given up 27 points to Tennessee and 36 points to Miami, okay? That's not a good defense. They might have good personnel, but they are not playing good defense. The Browns compare more closely to the Saints. If you can hold them to 15 points, you can probably still win this game. Your big issue is going to be your pass protection because they have a very good defensive front. The back end, Kevin Byard, former All-Pro safety, solid, but the rest of the group, kind of shaky, right? So if you can protect up front, you got a good shot of winning the game. But I caution this. 2019 was the last time Browns fans looked at Tennessee on the schedule and marked it with a green check mark and said, that's a win. Do you remember the bomb that Tennessee dropped on the Browns to open that season?
Wear orange and brown. You don't matter.
Yeah. The Freddie Kitchens era got off on a terrible note because of Mike Vrabel. So I caution you expecting them to win. Even after you pick up the pieces, build yourself back up, by Thursday, you're going to be like, you know what? They're going to win this weekend. We're going to do it anyway. Next man up. You got to be tough. Be careful. Be careful. Mike Vrabel is a very good coach. He probably would have lost his job by now if he wasn't a really good coach. And they're going to bring it to them. So the Browns got to be good up front. That's going to be most important.
All right. So that is, of course, on deck, getting ready for the Titans. Nobody's feeling sorry for anybody. Nobody wants to see a player go down, opposing teams. But, Tennessee's not going to be coming in here, with bouquets of flowers for Kevin Stefanski and company. So we'll see what happens with the Browns and the Titans. Browns coming in 1-1. All right. Before we move on, talk about the Ravens, the Bengals especially, and kind of go around the NFL. Numbers that matter from last night's loss to Pittsburgh. I mean, I guess we could just begin and end and go 24. Nick Chubb. I mean, that's it. But we have other numbers that matter because otherwise that's too easy. And, we pay Nick a lot of money, and NFL pays Nick a lot of money to dig through these things. Numbers that matter for Nick. 4. What is significant about the number 4 other than it's Deshaun Watson's number?
4 is probably the ugliest number of the night.
Yes.
It also happens to be, I didn't even think about that now, honestly. That is.
He didn't mean that.
Whew, that is an unfortunate coincidence. That's the Browns' total giveaways in the loss to the Steelers last night. 4 turnovers, a lot of fumbles. The worst one was committed by number 4. Blindsided from behind, TJ Watt, I mean, he could have crawled in the end zone and he still would have scored. The worst part about that, by the way, in my opinion, is the fact that I texted my buddy, diehard Steeler fan, best friend from college, and I said, hey, use some unsavory, but about Renegade. I hate your song is essentially what I said, right? And no more than 3 minutes later, TJ Watt's walking in the end zone with that, and he just goes, wow, that text couldn't have been timed worse. I was like, you're right. Like, it gives it juice, man. It gives it juice. So
it's a great I wish it wasn't the Steelers song because it is a great song.
Oh, yeah. It's a good build-up,
I just thought
yeah. Browns tried that with In the Air tonight. Didn't work out.
Yeah, what did you think of the, not to skew
the intro?
Yeah, yay, nay.
It was cool. It was all right.
It was all right?
Yeah, I was curious to see how they'd apply it to the Browns and Steelers. That was all right.
I still, I enjoy the old Hank Jr. Are you ready for some football?
Well, they kind of had to move on from him.
Are you saying that I live in the past too much now?
No.
Okay.
No.
How about another number that matters? Not my age. 12. Now, you have in parentheses, this is interesting. You have 12, and then in parentheses, he gets fancy here. 12, really 14. Explain yourself, Mr. Shook.
This is what you get from sharing a Google Doc with somebody. 12, the total number of follicles that grow in this portion of my head. No. 12 is the total number of points scored by Pittsburgh's defense, which is really 14 when you add in the extra points. The Steelers finished with 26 points. That means if you count the extra points to the defense because they earned the opportunity to kick that, they outscored their offense. The Browns, they really blame themselves for losing this game.
Here's one I kind of teased it a little bit earlier, but normally a lot of times teases will be a good thing. In this case, it wasn't. The number 3, why was that significant?
Let's double duty it. It's Deshaun Watson's completions under pressure, 3 of 11, not good. And also the number of catches ruled incomplete on targets to Elijah Moore. This is just off of a head count, by the way. I didn't actually verify this.
Oh.
Because he failed to get 2 feet down. Like I said, he would have had a hell of a game at Ole Miss last night. Phenomenal game.
So we do have that going for us, which is
nice.
Yes. Okay. 6 is a number as well. That was Baker Mayfield's number, but we're not gonna. It's not a Baker set. It was 6.
A lot of stink. I didn't even realize I was doing any of this last night.
Yeah.
Total sacks of Deshaun Watson, 6. I think he probably ran into half of them, and one mattered more than the rest. But that's got to get cleaned up. Definitely got to get cleaned up.
How about, wow, here's a big number. No, actually, I skipped ahead. I'm sorry. 9. 9 for numbers that matter on the bold, bald breakdown following the Browns' 4-point loss to the Steelers last night. Nick, what about the number 9?
The problem with this number is that it's going to enrage you, Browns fans.
You can't possibly say anything that's going to enrage me even more than I am.
Oh, we're just going to pile on. This is like sprinkles on top of the sundae here. Okay. The Steelers won that game by gaining 9 first downs offensively all night. 9. They didn't do anything on offense except for one pass. He's throwing pens. These aren't my sunglasses, but I'd consider throwing them as well if I felt quite as angry as you did. I don't know.
9 first downs they got.
9.
I mean, if you say going into the game, some of the numbers that
the Browns had 20. The next number is going to fall in line with this.
All right, and this will wrap it up as far as the numbers that matter. 153. 153, and you said it correlates to 9. So what's that correlation, Nick?
The Browns outgained the Steelers by 153 offensive yards.
And still lost by 4.
Turnovers, man. Turnovers will lose you a football game. It is the most defining metric in football, and it certainly stood last night.
And see, that was last week. It wasn't just that they beat Cincinnati, Nick. It wasn't just that. It was they beat Cincinnati with, obviously, an incredible defensive effort. And while the offense didn't look good, there wasn't, it was that clean, they didn't have a lot of penalty. It was, okay. And you didn't have that. And you didn't have that in elements last week. But yet, I don't know. I mean, how much of this is, and I know we don't like to talk about this, or maybe I shouldn't say don't like to talk about it. We don't talk about it that much, but from a human element, these guys get paid a lot of money, and I know people can say, well, hey, they've got millions of reasons to care and to play better and all that good stuff. How much do you think these guys are a little bit affected on the field when they see not just a teammate, but Nick Chubb?
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt.
Okay.
And there's two sides to this coin, because on the one, you could say, well, I mean, that was devastating. That's your leader. He's a quiet leader, but if anybody's going to show up to work first in the door, last leave, that typical cliche and all that stuff, it's Nick Chubb. And he's not going to complain about anything. He's going to do his job. He's going to do it really damn well. So losing him is like losing your captain, your guide. You're lost in the forest.
Be like us losing Bohm.
I lost. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How would we ever survive?
I don't know. I don't even know how I would get to this place. It would be like in the woods without a map. Okay, that's what it would be like in that instance. But you're also professionals, and you do have to find it within you to recover. And I thought they did. I honestly don't like to blame the way the game went last night on that. It's more the fact that you couldn't rely on him in the offense once he was gone.
Your money player was not anywhere close to being a money player.
No.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's where we're at right now with the Browns, in addition to still trying to take in and process the loss of Nick Chubb. most likely for the year. All right, let's go around the league before we wrap things up. Again, the bald breakdown right here on Big Play Sports. Again, the Chico Borman Show. I'm Mike Chico Borman. He is Nick Shook with NFL.com and NFL Network.
We got some good gleams going right now. Look at that.
Well, I mean,
in case you worried or if you questioned if we were bald, we're bald.
It wasn't false advertising. Yeah, boy, that is a nice glare going on right there. Right
like
there
Squidward
at the
today.
tip.
Buff this thing out.
Yeah. Yeah, see the you see on the graphic there, our graphic designer Cody, who's so talented.
Fantastic. Good job, Cody.
It's not false advertising because he has the
gleams.
Gleam marks.
That's like the defining characteristic of that entire
I agree.
graphic.
I totally agree. That's
drives
Cody leaving nothing to chance right there. Shout out to Cody. All right. I'll tell you what. We'll stick with the Steelers for 1 second before we move on to the Bengals and stay in the division. But the Steelers, you mentioned a running back controversy brewing. Najee Harris, oh boy, that's it. Matt Canada's come under a lot of fire for the last few years. I have some friends who are Steeler fans and they can't stand the guy. But Matt Canada, not a popular guy.
No.
Najee Harris, not much of a running game. Jaylen Warren looks pretty explosive. What's going on there in the Steel City? Not that we really care, but
I mean, it's been a few years now where the Steelers fans have really wanted Matt Canada gone.
Yeah,
and for a moment this preseason, it felt like that might actually go away because they were firing on all cylinders, but it was the preseason. I believe last year my buddy sent me a photo from a local beer distributor because, that's what's legal in Pennsylvania, that crazy state. And it said it was the Matt Canada Blackout Special or something, and it's like a high ABV beer so that folks could forget.
Brilliant marketing. I hate to say it.
It was
but
on
brilliant
sale,
marketing.
so folks could forget his play calling. They needed that last night. They won the game, but they probably needed a little bit of that last night. I thought Kevin Stefanski was never going to be one-upped with his option on 4th and 1 until Pittsburgh decided to run a read option on 3rd and 2 on a play that could have really put the game away for them. Instead of Pickett getting outside the linebacker and picking up the first down and Matt Canada looking like a genius, he ran into 2 defenders who were right there waiting for him. Got sandwiched. Pickett took a lot of shots last night, by the way. And afterward, they said that wasn't how the play was intended. Well, of course not. You don't run a read option anticipating to run into the read guy and another defender right there ready to take you down. Yeah, it felt like, I really got on Kevin Stefanski here, right? I got on him hard about how he outcoaches himself and tries to be the smartest guy in the room too often, right? Gets too cute, I think, is really the most accurate way to describe the way he calls plays. Matt Canada tried to be the smartest guy in the room last night. In that exact moment, I saw somebody tweet, 3rd and 2, Matt Canada, quote, "It's Matt Canada time." Like, they got a problem. And they have a good running back in Jaylen Warren, who's better than Najee Harris, who just doesn't have the burst he used to have. That guy's got a lot of tread taken off those tires from the time that he got to Alabama all the way to now. They put way too much on his shoulders the last 2 years. I expect them to lean more on Warren. He just looks like the more explosive, fresher runner, the better player for them in the running and the passing game right now, no matter what their offensive line is like.
Only because I don't want to leave any stone unturned, and it's certainly not trying to pile on Kevin Stefanski. But did we talk about why he went up-tempo late in the game?
No, and that was one of my big gripes with him because there's 11 minutes in the game.
Lead, right?
Yeah, you have a 3-point lead. There's 11 minutes in the game, and he's going up-tempo. I actually messaged one of my colleagues, why is he increasing the tempo here? Like, trying to prevent defensive substitutions. It's like, or bleed clock. Like, this is a Browns team that used to put games away on the ground with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and you got neither of them now. Why would you go up-tempo? Foot on the gas is what lost you that game, kind of. 2nd and 9, you call a pass play, strip sack. We know how that ended now.
Chico, I think you said we moved away from the Browns game, so why no, I'm sorry, and I do apologize for that. All right, I want to ask you quickly before we get out of here about Cincinnati. The Bengals are 0-2. We're hearing a lot of, well, they started last season 0-2, so no need to worry. And I'm kind of, I want to believe that, and I do kind of believe that because Cincinnati is a very talented team. They have a very good quarterback. But here's where it is different from last year. That quarterback in Joey Burrow he's ailing. This calf, we don't know. Is he going to have to miss some time? So is the Bengals 0-2 something to be ultra concerned about in the Queen City, or is it just as simple as saying, hey, they started last year 0-2?
So I just checked their scores from last year because I needed to refresh myself. I remember that week 1 game they lost to the Steelers. T.J. Watt suffered a partially torn pec, cost them like half the year, and they lost that game on a last-second field goal. They also lost to Dallas the next week 20-17. That's not quite exactly the same as what they're looking like right now. They, for 6 quarters, had nothing to show offensively. And maybe Joe Burrow's lack of mobility, which has not been discussed very much, but if his calf is an issue, which it seemed to be an issue by the end of the game on Sunday, that definitely, I think, would play a part in how their offense operates. Now, they did figure it out in the second half, and what I saw a lot of coordinators do throughout the league this weekend was they realized, look, we're not going to be able to just chuck it downfield. We are not in midseason form. Let's get a guy into a rhythm, underneath passes, deep digs, speed outs, stuff like that, slants. The Ravens did it really well in that game. Cincinnati started to do that in the second half. He connected with T. Higgins on one. He was throwing to Jamar Chase a lot, although Jamar Chase didn't finish with a great stat line. He threw to 2 touchdowns to T. Higgins. They started to figure it out. They just ran out of time, and they couldn't get off the field when they needed to most of the end of that game. So I think the Bengals are going to round into form, but if the calf issue is a real issue, and if it's like a hamstring, which can tend to be nagging, I'm a little bit lower on them than I was going into the season right now. This is a tough division.
Oh, man.
It's going to be a brutal division, no matter what happens in Cleveland.
And see, that's something that, on top of everything else we talked about over this past hour, which, again, it's difficult because you want to.
I feel better.
I do, too. I was just thinking the same thing. I do feel a little bit better. I feel like with Nick Chubb, it's one of those things where, I'm trying to find something to occupy my mind, and there are other things to talk about, but then inevitably you go back to, I don't want to dramatize this, but it's real. I mean, he's somebody that he's not just your normal, everyday, average football player.
I logged into a Twitter space that I saw my buddy was in last night. That was a mistake, but it was entertaining for about 4 minutes. There was kind of a civilized discussion, and then all of a sudden one of the moderators just went off and just started screaming expletive-laced language, and I was like, I have to get out of here before somebody sees me in here. This is what this show is for us today. This is your rage room. Go break stuff.
And Bohm, you should, now, because it's podcast form and Bohm has the license to swear if he wants to. He's like a little kid. How you're around your friends at the age of 12 and you're like, hey, this stays between us. We don't tell our parents. So if we want to swear, that's Bohm here on he likes to do that. Real quick on the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, they were victorious over the Bengals. Somebody really was short-selling them to the point where your colleague Eric Edholm's like, wow, I don't know if I'd go that far, Chico. I'm like, you know what? That offense is so overrated. And they're still working through things with Todd Monken. But, man, at the end of the day, Baltimore is going to be Baltimore. I said this to you out in the hallway, and I know it's not sexy and it's boring and it's all that sort of thing. Baltimore has that culture that Cleveland has been striving for since they've come in, and culture is consistently winning.
I hate that, though, because sometimes it's very ambiguous and it feels like it's leaned on too much, but in this instance, you're right.
I blame the Browns organization over the years for me saying that, because they've made me believe
because of the lack thereof.
We're going to play like a Brown today and culture, and so I've heard that word so much it's ingrained in my head, but deep down, do I really know what it is? No, but I think if there was a team that defined it, or a team that defined it, the Baltimore Ravens would probably be on the short list. And what I mean by that is, yes, they have talent. I don't want to make it sound like they've got a bunch of, that guy playing quarterback's pretty good, and he ran around a little bit in that game against the Bengals. But they've had a lot of adversity early on. You just find a way to get it done. And here are the Baltimore Ravens, ho-hum, 2-0. I don't know how it's going to play out. Future, the past says that Lamar Jackson might go down at some point, hopefully for them, not at the end of the season, which he normally does. But I don't know. I saw some culture. Damn it. I saw some culture out of those Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, Nick. That makes me feel like I'm really smart or something when I say that, which obviously I'm not.
I think that fans of the Migos, which that's a band you don't know. That's because it's not a band. It's a rap group. They named multiple albums.
Boom, do you know who it is?
I do.
Of course he does.
I knew you would. They named multiple albums culture, so they're a big fan of this. I tried to think about the top four or five teams with culture that I can point to and confidently say, yeah. And right now, 2 of them are in the AFC North, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And one of them has started to deteriorate, and that's New England. So I'm going to replace them with Kansas City. And then the 4th team in my mind was San Francisco. And the Browns are not near that right now. And a lot of that has to do with quarterback stability now, or lack thereof. San Francisco has been able to navigate that, unlike the other teams. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And the difference statistically, this is a pretty similar game to the Browns. The game that the Ravens won over the Bengals on Sunday. The only difference is they had no turnovers and the Browns had 4. I mean, they 9 of 14 on third down, a little bit better than the Browns on third down. A little bit 6 more first downs than the Browns gained, 26-20. But otherwise, I mean, very similar. 415 net yards against the Bengals. Like they did a great job. What they did, in my mind, from week 1 to week 2, is they just started to figure it out a little bit. That's a lot of what week 2 has been. Is guys either started to figure it out in the second half of week 1 and it carried over to week 2, or like Derek Carr started to figure out at the end of week 1 and then didn't figure out until the end of week 2 as well. The Ravens, their strength, surprisingly, is their offensive balance under Todd Monken. It's not the deep shots that everybody talked about. We're not opening up and everything. They took a few and they missed most of them.
Right.
But what they did really well was underneath stuff and relying on the depth of their receiving room. Odell Beckham leaves with an injury. And next thing you know, who's going to be the guy to step up in the second half of a suddenly tight game? Nelson Aguilar. Caught a great dime that Lamar dropped on him. Probably the best throw Lamar's had this year.
That was, yeah, you're right.
It's a great throw.
They got a real good rookie in Zay Flowers as well.
Oh, he's fantastic. And look, this is the same team that drafted Brashad Perriman and Rashad Bateman. Similar names, actually. Neither of those guys have really produced. The hype has been there before, so you're hesitant to believe in the hype again. Believe in Zay Flowers, people who are following the Ravens. I know it's not popular in this town, but pay attention to fantasy owners because he's going to continue to produce in this offense.
Okay, so let me just say this. Eric Edholm, our mutual buddy, he, of course, is with you at NFL.com. He does power rankings, and so he was on with me last week, and he said Zay Flowers, of course, people I work with were like, oh, my God, did he just say he was Antonio Brown? He didn't say he was Antonio Brown. He said that he has a little, like there's certain separation traits, twitchiness.
Yeah.
Of course he's not Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go for that. But it's those special qualities that
it is. It's the separation. It's the quick twitch. I saw it in Tank Dell, actually, at the Combine, too, in Houston, and I think he could be a similar player. But Zay Flowers has definitely been that. He's been a catch-and-run guy. He kind of looks like what Odell looks like in practice, which is, especially when he was in Cleveland, where he would just catch it and make 2 guys miss and everything because he's got that elite agility.
Yeah.
He's like that, except he's producing on Sundays. So that's going to be a tough Week 4 game. That's why, ultimately, look, we've been very ho-hum about the Browns because of what happened last night today, right? I say this. All you need to do is get out of Week 4 2-2. Bottom line, you need to win this weekend, and you can even give yourself some space to lose to the Ravens next week. Get out 2-2, and then take on the rest of the season.
All right. Well, the season must go on. I know it's tough. The week must go on. Work must go on. Family must go on. Life must go on without Nick Chubb in the Browns starting lineup. And look, I have no problem saying it is tough for us because we all love Nick Chubb, the player. We love Nick Chubb, the person. Everybody does. We'll try to make it through together. This was a very
cathartic.
Yeah, and I feel like, I know it's an overused term here in Cleveland, like when you do a show on Monday following the Browns and like, well, hey, it's therapy. And
the morning after, the aftermath.
Exactly. Yeah. Sit on the couch and let's talk about it. But I feel like today we did that. It was a bit cathartic, to use your word, but hey, Mike Vrabel in Tennessee is coming to town on Sunday, and like I said, not going to be feeling sorry for anybody. Vrabel of anybody.
No.
Like that's why I love Vrabel. Vrabel, he still doesn't like the fact that they traded A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
He still doesn't like that, that GM.
GM doesn't have a job anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, again, Tennessee Titans on Sunday against Cleveland Browns, hopefully an opportunity for the Browns to get back on the winning track and for Deshaun Watson to start looking more and more like that guy that we're assuming we're going to see. He's Nick Shook. Any final words for the folks? I thought you had some very poignant moments. That's poignant, Poignant, poignant.
No bell goes off. You have advanced to the next round of the spelling bee. Good job.
Spelling bee champion.
No, I mean, you were a spelling bee champion?
4th, 5th, and 6th grade, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the fun stuff you learn on this show.
It's the only thing that I've ever accomplished.
I don't think I have anything further. I appreciate the kind words, by the way. I don't think I have anything further because writing about this last night felt cathartic because there was a lot of just pent-up energy because it was a crazy game. All I will say to Browns fans, again, is that you need to get out 2-2, and the night is always darkest just before the dawn, to quote Aaron Rodgers and Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. And was that corny? Yes, but it's kind of sunny out here on the shores of Lake Erie. Enjoy the day. There will be another game to play. You, as Browns fans, you have been in worse situations than this. Trust me, I grew up in it. I lived through all of it. 2002 was still my favorite season, and that was a long time ago. All right.
And if you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. If you see those magic mushrooms out in the yard, they might look good, but don't eat those only Aaron Rodgers can eat those.
I think that might cause stomach problems.
Magic mushrooms, so he can rise again. We're going to do this again next Tuesday, beginning at noon. Nick, it was a pleasure. Thanks to Michael Bohm for doing what he does, knowing every band in the world, being able to relate to you, so you're not just, I feel bad for Nick because when he's talking music and he's like, now here's a band you won't know about, but Bohm, thankfully I have Bohm. It's really the only reason.
Well, we're a little closer in age, and I learned. I mean, Stacy's mom. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Stacy's mom.
You were like, oh, it's the Cars, and then they're like, no, it's Fountains of Wayne.
You still remember that, don't you?
That was 10 years ago.
He still remembers that. I heard that song. We were playing it coming back from a break. Sorry.
Sitting behind the glass, just shaking my head.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, the Cars. Best Friend's Girl. That's a good song. They're like, that's Fountains of Wayne, Stacy's mom. And I'm like, all right, we're back. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with more Chico Borman Show until 2. Again, we'll do this, the Bold Bald Breakdown, right here next week, beginning at noon. Don't go anywhere. All righty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show. On this Tuesday, we carry on. We, as Bohm would say, we commence forth. This is, it's okay to say it's tough. Is it We're not talking about life or death. I get that, but it's tough. I mean, we're a fan base. The Browns are a fan base that has been through a lot. And it seems like, and I know it's a cliche. I know it, well, but it's true. Like, just when you think it, we've written all of those stories before. Well, throw this one in there as well. It sucks. There's no getting around it. Just like there's no replacing Nick Chubb, the football player, the running back, and just the guy. But, there's 15 more games. Deshaun Watson, without a doubt, has to be much, much better. Kevin Stefanski has to be much, much better. But the games, they will continue on. All right, 216-626-7901. And on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. You can also follow us on YouTube, the YouTube channel Chico Borman Show. Hit subscribe if you are not following already. All right, I don't know how well this is going to go over, Bone, but like I said, this is one of those weeks where we just kind of, we throw some things out there. It is a bit of it's a tough day all around. As far as Deshaun Watson's concerned, here's where I'm going with him. And I've talked about this with other athletes that have gone through, personal stuff, whether their own doing or not. But, in this case, you're dragged through the mud. I mean, you embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed a lot of people. And, whether he did or did, I'm not here to get into that, but it's been ugly, okay? It's been ugly. One of the things, I've mentioned this a lot in terms of LeBron James, right? One of the things about LeBron that I noticed when he went to Miami was he was still an incredible player, but he wasn't very beloved. And I don't just mean here in Cleveland. I mean everywhere. Like, he was booed. He was just, whatever. Now, some guys thrive on that, okay? Some guys, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, it doesn't make you a better player, a worse player, not one of the best of all time. But certain guys, certain athletes, even though they're professional athletes, want to be liked for the most part. You're not going to please everybody, but you want to be liked. LeBron was that way. And I think with Deshaun Watson, this is where you say, and it's very early. I know there's a lot of games, all of that. We preface it. But Deshaun Watson, there's a part of me that thinks if you can just, take everything that's gone on over the last couple of years and just, move on, no big deal. And, of course, he has to present that. Of course, he has to, hey, I'm ready to go. They're paying him a lot of money to play quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, not mope around it. But this is where I think the human aspect I wonder about because, a lot has happened. And does he not like the fact? Does it bother him deep down that nobody likes him? And I'm not just saying like those that were against the signing here in Cleveland. I'm saying anywhere. I've said this before leading into the season. This is not one of those years, and it hasn't been for a couple of seasons, where the Browns are going to be the team that, everybody loves, the team that everybody's pulling for. That ended for two reasons. One, a couple of seasons where the expectations were sky high. People were expecting that to happen, and then it didn't come to fruition. And then secondly, they signed a controversial figure. Whatever your thoughts are on what happened or didn't happen, very controversial. So naturally, across the country, Browns don't get the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not just talking about, rankings and, who do you like, who do you not. I'm just saying, like, Deshaun Watson's, he's not just getting booed, like he's hearing things on the road. I can't even imagine what he heard in Pittsburgh. And yeah, and you might say, well, Ben Roethlisberger, yeah, Ben Roethlisberger heard a lot on the road too. I guess my point in all of this is some guys while they present like, hey, it's cool. I mean, I'm here to play football. It does affect them. This might be affecting Deshaun Watson, okay? When he was in Houston, remember they had all those floods. They had the hurricane and Deshaun Watson, in addition to, we look at the COVID year, 2020, and, just basically his short time in Houston before everything went south as far as the contract and management and all that, he was beloved. I mean, he was not only a great quarterback, but he was a guy that, and I was talking to Nick about this off the air before we did the bald breakdown. And I said to him, I'm like, he was beloved in Houston, not just because of how he played, but remember, there were workers, and I'm not just talking about we're not talking front office employees or anything like that. We're talking, janitorial staff. We're talking concession workers. We're talking ushers. And he paid all of their rents, I think, for 2 months or 3 months. And you do that and you play well, you're going to be highly thought of. Okay. Now it's completely the opposite. And like I said, I'm not using this as an excuse. I'm trying to figure out, we keep saying, Deshaun's got to be better. He should be better. I can't put my finger on it. Is some of it we need to give him more time? Maybe, probably, hopefully. But by now, and Nick studies this stuff a lot more than I do, there's reason for concern. And sure, some of it is, hey, he needs to read this better, or he needs to, stay in the pocket longer. All of that stuff is fair. But there is athletes, we talk about the great ones, the good ones, the great ones, the elite ones. And the great ones, the elite ones for sure, have a swagger, and it's not a fake swagger. They have it. They believe it. They know it. They know they can do it, and they know that, everybody, for the most part, loves what they do at their job and everything like that, and they thrive in that environment. I don't think Deshaun Watson, as much as he might say, I'm good, as much as he might say, hey, everything's fine, and he's projecting that out there, I wonder that, and when you don't play well and you don't meet expectations, however lofty they might be, however unrealistic they might be to some, when you don't meet expectations, people begin making their own conclusions. All right? And this is for me, I remember saying with Tiger Woods, and I don't mean this like he's the devil, but Tiger Woods, when all those scandals were coming out and then he was playing in the Masters, and I remember, there were some people saying, well, he's Tiger and that's just what makes him great and he's going to be able to block all that stuff out. And he did for the most part. Now, I think it bothered him a little bit, but for the most part, yeah, he's so mentally tough. Michael Jordan, so mentally tough. Kobe Bryant, so mentally tough. That it didn't matter, and in some cases, they actually thrive when people don't like them. But again, I want to reiterate this, and I love LeBron James. I'm a staunch LeBron supporter. It was no secret that LeBron did not take to the villain role. He didn't like being a guy that when he went to Miami, he got booed, not just by Cleveland fans or by every other fan base in the country. He didn't like that. Comes back, makes good with Cleveland, and I'm not saying that was the reason why, but it certainly helped his reputation, but I don't think he's ever really gotten over that. Some of that stuff that we can't even really get into detail about, because some people just say, hey, you're never going to be Michael Jordan, and therefore I'm never going to like you, and that's just how it is. Unfair? Yeah, but that's just kind of the truth. I am wondering, as far as Deshaun Watson, how much is that, I don't want this, I don't like being badmouthed on the road. I don't like being hated by, other fan bases, even some in Cleveland that don't, totally disagree with what went down and then the Browns signing me. Some guys, they just don't get that back. And can that be the difference between a guy returning to form? I say yes. And you might say, well, you're grasping at straws. You're trying to find it. You're right. I am to some degree. And I was somebody that was able to look past, last season and go, that was a mess from the beginning and all the suspension. And I know it's only 2 games, Bone. I know it's only 2 games. 15 more of these bad boys to go. But as he continues to struggle under pressure, as Nick pointed out, I start to wonder more how much that spotlight and how much that spotlight not being a positive one is getting to Deshaun Watson. And I think it's a fair thing to question as far as I'm concerned.
Chico, my problem with my Browns optimism is that in my head, I'm just like subconsciously making excuses for him. Right?
Sure.
Like, it felt like you got off to a really good start in terms of moving the ball, lots of positive plays, and then all of a sudden you lose Nick Chubb, and it feels like it goes all down the drain. And in my head, I'm just kind of accounting for, that pick 6 was obviously a Harrison Bryant drop that he should have held on to.
Yep.
How could any quarterback succeed with the amount of rushing, like pressure that he was getting with this offensive line? So there's all these excuses just running through my head with all of it. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of throws that Deshaun needed to make that he did not make. And I don't care how many breaks you didn't get with, like, you're getting face masked and you wind up getting called for holding. And
yeah, have we ever had a quarterback flagged for 2 face mask penalties?
And not have one called on you? You know what? That's another thing too, Chico. I wonder if maybe they're not getting any of these breaks from the refs just because they view him as that sort of villain.
And does he think that way? I mean, I know I'm totally cool with people outside looking at this and going, well, here we go. Here's the overreaction train leaving the station. That's fair. That's fair. And I'm not going to say it is or isn't. What I will say is, am I concerned? Yes. And am I trying to find different reasons why, trying to make sense of it? Well, that's what we all do, whether you're a talk show host, whether you're, at work talking with your friends or wherever, like, hey, what do you think's going on? Oh, well, it's early. And that might be. Maybe he does. First of all, I want to go back to this again. I can't believe how many people last year honestly believed that, like, well, Jacoby Brissett will just, he'll keep us afloat, and then Deshaun Watson's going to come. Like, that was mind-boggling to me. But that was then. This is now. I just feel like, there's just something off. And when you say, okay, yeah, he needs more reps, I don't doubt that. When you say, well, you need better tackle play from Jed Wills, I don't doubt that. Nick Chubb being out, yeah, sure. But, hey, let's face it. One of the things that, and it goes with the territory, like it or not, fair or unfair, when you get that kind of money, $230 million guaranteed, you're expected to, well, hey, we've got this guy. He's going to make everyone better. Not only does he have to play great, but he's got to make everyone better. He's not even playing great. He's not even playing good, playing well. It's, And then you factor in the pressure. Pressure's only going up. And I'm not just talking, in the pocket. I'm not just talking, defenses scheming and coming after him with some questions now on the offensive line. I'm also talking about, this stuff isn't going anywhere with Deshaun. As far as the bad, publicity, and I mean, this is what he signed up for. And it's up to him to say what he wants to say, do what he wants to do, and all of that. But this is reality. He is not well liked by a lot of people in this country. And there was a time when he was beloved. He was beloved in the city of Houston because, he was playing well, but man, what a good guy. This guy just gets it. Look at him giving money and helping and then all of a sudden, his that great label started to fade because he had, he wanted out, he wanted traded, and that was before all of this other stuff with the allegations broke. But then that did happen on top of it, and you say, well, I don't think he's recovered from 2 years off of football, no football. I agree with that. I also don't know if he's recovered from going from Pied Piper and beloved guy and great quarterback and beloved citizen to we hate your guts. And I don't mean we in terms of Cleveland. I just mean nationwide. And I don't want to hear from people like, well, that's not fair to him. Some people are going to be entitled to that opinion because and this is what the Browns signed up for. This is what Jimmy and Dee Haslam signed up for. I hope it gets better. I think, there's still a lot of season left. There's still a lot of talent on this team, but let's just be real here. With Nick Chubb out, if Deshaun Watson is just average, if he's just good and not great, not let alone elite, this team, it's too competitive. I mean, this division is too tough. The conference is too tough. And now you made it a little bit more difficult. And I know it sucks because 1 week after celebrating a big win over Cincinnati, and there was definite reasons to be definitive reasons to be excited and to be happy about it. Now all of a sudden you've done a complete 180. That's football, but I'm looking at Deshaun Watson and going, okay, why is this happening? And these are things I'm starting to question. We'll take a break. When we come back, Fair or Foul with Mr. Bombastic. It's the Chico Borman Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. Chico Borman Show on this Tuesday afternoon here on the Big Play Sports Network. Good to have you along. By the way, folks, if you need bet credits for football season, and who doesn't, well, we got the answer. Big Play Network presented by Tipico Sportsbook. The Tipico Sportsbook app has your traditional bets, money lines, spread, point totals, all that good stuff. But also lock-in player props. Check out our Big Play boosts every single week to back your favorite Cleveland teams and athletes with the best odds in Ohio. Get in the action. Load up for football season using promo code. Write this down. Promo code BIGPLAY150 to get $150 in bet credits on us, plus a $30 dog pound bet. Bet with the Big Play crew all season long with Tipico Sportsbook. Boom, what are you laughing about?
I just want to mention you can also use the code Chico150.
Chico1502. Yes, you can.
Both are applicable.
That's right. Applicable. Very, very good words. Good use of the word applicable to that situation using applicable. And with that, boom. And yeah, you can use Chico150 as well. I'm glad you pointed that out because that was pretty bad that I didn't. It's time for Fair or Foul.
All right, Chico. Well, I want to kick things off right out of the gate with some of the controversies from last night's Monday Night Football matchup. And one thing that has a lot of Browns fans up in arms, Chico, obviously the Nick Chubb injury, which was just, I mean, for me, that was like traumatic. It was surreal to experience, and you hate to see like a freak injury to that extent happen to a guy as great as Nick Chubb. With that said, a lot of Browns fans up in arms about Minkah Fitzpatrick, going full force directly into that knee. Fair or foul, Chico? That was a dirty hit.
Boom, I got to be, if I had to say right now, gun to my head, I would say foul. But I will also say that, and this is what I think is interesting about what happened last night, not only that it happened and it was awful, but remember right away you heard Joe Buck say, we're not going to show because it's gruesome. And I think that was the right call. Inevitably, what that leads to, though, is nobody sees a replay, including us in Cleveland, so nobody can really say definitively one way or the other, well, do we think it... I mean, Nate Burleson, keep in mind, and former Brown, Nate Burleson is a wide receiver. Ryan Clark is a former defensive back and former Steeler. Ryan Clark said, no, that wasn't dirty. Nate Burleson said, no, he kind of torpedoed himself right at his leg when another guy hit him high. I don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick plays that way. I also think, and this has to be taken into account, as much as I hate it, Nick Chubb was doing Nick Chubb things. Well, what are Nick Chubb things? Bouncing off guys. Like, I guarantee...
7 yards of carry?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just don't... Man, it's making me even sicker thinking about it now that we won't have him. But one of the things that makes him so special is it's not like there was a lot of room to run. He just made their room to run. And this is what he's done since he's been here. You look at, they have all these stats that they keep, yards after contact and all of that. He's like number one. I mean, he just, so... My point is, I'm sure at some point, Mike Tomlin said to his guys, hey, we got to get this guy to the turf. Enough of this. He's bouncing off guys. We got to gang tackle him. We got to get him. Now, I don't think he's saying you got to make a dirty hit, but here's the thing. I didn't see it enough. I didn't see it enough to know because we couldn't see it enough. I understand the network not doing it. So in a roundabout way, Bohm, I am totally playing the fence on this and sitting on the fence on this. I don't know. I'm sick to my stomach. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to Minkah here because he's not that type of player, but I don't know. It just sucks that he's done. It just sucks.
It's devastating, Chico.
Yeah.
It's absolutely awful. And
man.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a Browns game that I attended. It was preseason when OBJ was still playing for the Giants and Brian Bowdy Calhoun
remember that.
Took him out, went low, and Odell called him out for it. He said he thought it was malicious. And so it does remind me of that, but at the same time, going low this is no new story in the NFL. a tale as old as time. Like,
well, but some guys, see, here's the thing, though, and this is where I think the NFL, I'm glad you brought that up. This is where the NFL, we talk about Roger Goodell, and of course I'm going to blame Roger for some of this, right? Blurs the lines. There's a reason why the NFL, in the rule book, is they don't want you to go low and high and low. Like, there's a reason for that, and that's probably that play. Like, okay, you had a guy down, or, bringing him to the ground, and then Minkah Fitzpatrick, he had him high, so then Minkah Fitzpatrick goes low. From that standpoint, I could see where somebody might say, well, that's kind of a dirty hit. But then again, I'm also going to say, from the standpoint of the Steelers sideline and Mike Tomlin, he was probably in some ear holes after the first quarter going, hey, guys, he's great. We don't need to make him better. If you get two hands on him and your buddy has a chance to get him too, you better race over there and help him out. So,
isn't there like a tackling expression like the low man wins? Or is that golf?
No, I think that's like leverage and like football.
It's applicable to golf too.
Boom, you never cease to amaze me. Yes, in golf, it's not an expression, it's a fact. Low man wins. Except when they do the Stableford scoring system, where it's positive points.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Whole nother.
That sounds difficult to comprehend.
Look at you. You're really, you're on it today, Bone. That was good. Low man, yeah. Usually that's maybe wrestling, you get that too. But like in blocking and line play, you'll hear leverage, low man wins, all that, yeah.
But anyway, so sticking with the Browns, I want to ask you, Chico, because I mentioned earlier my Browns optimism. It's almost like I can't like fully take my blinders off, right? So I still want to believe that Watson could be the guy that the Browns hoped they were getting, right? So would it be fair or foul of me to be more concerned about the offensive line and the amount of pressures that they were letting up than the actual like quarterback play?
Okay, I'm just going to keep this theme going where I play it right down the middle, which is not what I should do, but I'm doing it anyway. I can't say either way because it's like a chicken or the egg type situation. I will say this, though, and Nick and I talked about this in the Bold Ball Breakdown last hour, that, okay, you're going to see pressure. I mean, that's not going to stop happening. He has the propensity to immediately drop the eyes and scramble out. Now, you say, well, yeah, and he's going to continue to do that, especially if Jed Wills isn't going to block anybody. And, okay, also true. But I guess that's where I say Deshaun Watson needs to be better. Kevin Stefanski needs to be better. The offensive line needs to be better. Yeah, all of it is true. You're not wrong in saying the line needs to be better, but Deshaun Watson, even back to his stellar days in Houston, he took a lot of sacks. And at times he took a lot of sacks because immediately, the eyes go down, he races out of the pocket, and then he goes down. So, I am playing the fence on that, but it is very, very. I think it's both sides on that equation.
Yeah, and I think as Nick Shook said during the Bold Ball Breakdown, there were a lot of issues with. It looked like Deshaun's escapability and his mobility looked, I guess, less than what he was capable of in 2020. So definitely things that I'm watching to see some improvement for.
And I think that's a confidence issue. I think
could be
that, like, if you're he just, this is what we keep saying. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I keep hearing. I keep saying myself. Nick, same thing. We're all saying this. He just seems off. Like, and it's not like, oh wow, he makes a few good throws, but he just seems off. And that's why I went on the whole tirade a moment ago talking about, like, is it beyond football, and is this whole, like, him not being a well-liked individual starting to really get to him. He doesn't look confident. He doesn't look confident on the field. He doesn't look confident off the field, even though he's trying to say the right things. And I think, as Primetime likes to say, Look good, feel good, play good. Right. Go, Bo.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
You remember Deion Sanders, right?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I have witnessed Deion live on a football field in my lifetime because
Were you in diapers?
No,
Oh.
One of the first Browns games I was ever taken to was a Browns preseason game against the Washington Redskins when Deion Sanders. It was like his first game as a Redskin.
Yeah, people forget he went from Atlanta, San Francisco. He played a year, right? Got a Super Bowl, then Dallas, then Washington, or was it San Francisco, Washington? I think it was San Francisco, Dallas.
I want to say it ended in Washington.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I remember he recovered a fumble in that game, and then the way that like he recovered it, and then he just spun the ball down on the field, like just celebrating.
Look good, play good.
Vivid memories, Chico.
Yes.
And you know what? One of my many character flaws is that I can be easily won over by a post-game press conference, and I think Deshaun said all the right things, Chico. He was basically taking all the blame and saying, it's my job as quarterback to take that responsibility, and I need to be better, and holding himself accountable. But he's got to walk the walk, and I don't want to take too much away from like saying all the right things in a press conference if you're not going to deliver on the field. But there is some degree of encouragement when you're only 2 weeks in and there's still a lot that remains to be seen. Yeah. So I'm trying to maintain my optimism here.
See, the only problem with that, and I can appreciate that, the only problem that I have with that, or I should say, I think, because what you're speaking of, Deshaun repeatedly saying, like, that's on me, I got to be better. You know who else used to say that all the time?
Not Hugh Jackson.
And not just Hugh. We got so that, like, it's not Deshaun's fault necessarily that we've heard that over and over years and years and years about, we need to go back to the film. I need to be better. We need to be better. Freddie Kitchens, Hugh, all of them. So it's just right now, like, yeah, what would normally be encouraging is just falling on deaf ears, I guess would be the best way I could say that.
The last one I want to ask you on today's Fair or Foul about the Browns, because I do have more questions that aren't the Browns.
Of course you do.
Of course you do. Yeah, so another controversy, because what a wild game last night. It was just like, it was surreal in a lot of ways. There was a lot of crazy, like, quirky things that happened. There were some issues that I saw a lot of Browns fans taking with some no calls that the Browns, I guess, didn't get, right? But the last one in the fourth quarter, Watson going for the back shoulder throw to DPJ, and it seems very clear that Patrick Peterson is holding the jersey. It's very blatant. Yeah. Now the argument could be made that the ball was uncatchable. Fair or foul, Chico? There should have been a flag on that play for pass interference.
I say absolutely fair. And look, Deshaun had another play too where, inexplicably just threw it like seemingly 30 yards out of bounds, and so I get that, but that was a play that you have to call that. And in real time, I think we all, I know I was, and I'm sure many Browns fans are like, wow, I need to see that again. But then when you saw it again, you're like, oh my God, they need to call that. Like it was blatant. It was for God and everybody to see. He grabbed the jersey. It's one thing to grab the jersey and let go. It's another thing to grab the jersey and turn him, which is exactly what he did. And that's where, look, they lost the game for a variety of reasons. But, yeah, is that frustrating as hell? Sure it is, especially when that's, a very key drive. But, yeah, that was a horrible non-call in my opinion. And I'm a bit of a homer. But that was not a good call, non-call.
Yeah, and we touched on it earlier, and I have to wonder if just with Watson being sort of perceived as the villain around the league, if they're just not going to get those 50-50 calls, which that wasn't even a 50-50 call. Like, that was so blatant.
Yeah, I see. Here's the thing with that. I can't believe that, like, in the moment, because those officials have a tough job to do. Nobody's saying otherwise. Roger Goodell makes it even tougher on them by not having full-time employees, but that's a whole other issue. But, like, they have a very tough job to do. So I can't believe that, like, in the moment, and even going into the game, they're like, all right, I hate this. I can't stand this Deshaun Watson guy. But I don't know. So, I mean, and this is where your mind goes. Like my mind went a little while ago thinking about, well, is there other things involved here why Deshaun can't take that step forward? You know, you say that with officials. Are they no longer going to get the benefit of the doubt? Some will say they never get the benefit of the doubt, and that's been going on for years and years, and that's what everybody says about their own teams. Kind of like they say that Joe Buck hates their own teams, about everybody in the league. But anyway.
Which I never said, by the way.
No, you never said.
However, you give me the perfect transition here when you mentioned taking the next step. Because Ohio State head coach Ryan Day said in the Skol session leading into that matchup against Western Kentucky, we're going to take another step today, right? And it did feel like, in many regards, you saw a little bit more consistency out of the offense. Now, Western Kentucky's offense was able to move the ball a little bit better, but we knew going in that this was a different, that air raid setup. This was going to test them. With all that said, Chico, obviously a huge Week 4 looms as Ohio State travels to South Bend to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, last I checked on courtesy of our partners at Tipico, the spread was 3 points. Ohio State giving 3 points. Fair or foul? Are you taking that bet on Tipico? Are you feeling like Ohio State can cover that -3?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Ohio State's better, but I still think with Ryan Day, there's that element of are they going to, and especially, that's in South Bend, the hostile environment. Are they going to do the little things that are big things? Are they not going? Is Kyle McCord not going to get rattled? Is the offensive line going to be physical? I don't know. I mean, Notre Dame's not a juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, but they're good enough and they're coached well enough that if Ohio State goes out there and it's not fair to say, play because, the expectations are so high. But if they go in there and they kind of have that lackluster, and we've all seen it from them, lackluster effort in the first half or quarter, offensive line, second and short, third and short, they can't move them. They're gonna be in for one. So I say yes, and I think they will win that game. Not in a blowout, but I can't sit here and tell you that I'm not a little bit concerned that idea of laying an egg could absolutely occur in South Bend.
I think it's interesting, Chico, because a lot of college programs this year are kind of in limbo at that quarterback position. Now, one of the exceptions, of course, is USC with Caleb Williams and Texas with Quinn Ewers. But then you look at programs like Alabama, where Nick Saban just named Milrose the starting quarterback. Jaden Milroe.
Yeah.
The starting quarterback again.
What's going on with Bama? That offense. Whew.
Yeah.
Man.
And
offensive line bad. Like, they're bad on offense.
Yeah. And, obviously there's questions at quarterback for Ohio State as well, but I think there are equally as many questions with Notre Dame. And Hartman, I think this is...
Yeah, I'm not wowed by... I know he's gotten a lot of... but
He's not moving the dial for me, Chico.
I agree. I would agree with that.
Even J.J. McCarthy struggled pretty badly in Week 2.
Yeah.
Or Week 3, I should say. But I think it's interesting because... to me, ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to that quarterback position and how often they can make plays
Sure.
and can they get the job done. And against a stout Ohio State team, I don't know that Hartman can do that. I'm more worried about the team up north than I am the Fighting Irish.
Oh, easy. Yeah, I don't. That's not even a question. I'm like Notre Dame is not. Yeah, I don't look at Notre Dame right now and say, oh my gosh, that team is a. But they are, like I said, they are good enough that if Ohio State doesn't come out and they don't execute and they don't do all the, if they come out with the effort they had in Week 1 and 2, but especially Week 1 against Indiana, where you're not converting on third and short and moving the pile and all that sort of thing, you'll get beat. I mean, it's that simple. You will get beat.
All right, Chico. Well, last one I got for you today.
Yeah.
Interesting little drama brewing out of the New York Jets organization.
Love some drama.
Running back Breece Hall in his second year missed some time due to injury, but had a pretty promising start to his first season. Comes back, only gets 4 carries in their most recent matchup. And so I think he's visibly frustrated. He tweets out an emoji of just 4 footballs and the ... Clearly venting some frustration there. Fair or foul, Chico? Breece Hall by the end of this season will be a New York Jet.
Fair. If for no other reason, again, look around the league and look at what, we talk about with the running back situations. Like, people aren't going to want drama on top of that. Now you say, well, yeah, you also have running backs that are injured, and therefore there's going to be a spot. I don't think the Jets are just going to move away from Dalvin Cook. He's not a long-term answer. Breece Hall is a very talented back. I think there's going to be a lot. You're going to see Breece Hall tweeting. You're going to see Garrett Wilson tweet. Garrett Wilson had to make an all-world catch from Zach Wilson, and they're back to the Jets are back to having that offense that is going to struggle. There's a reason why they did what they did with Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, he's gone. But yeah, he's going to continue to be frustrated, but I don't think he's going anywhere.
That'll do it for today's Fair or Foul.
That will do it for today's edition of Fair or Foul. We're going to we're out of here. We're going to take a break, and we will be back with you. A long break, a long snooze, Boom. And we'll be back with you tomorrow. We'll be talking much more. Browns getting ready for Tennessee, trying to put the Steelers in the rearview mirror. In addition, we'll be talking some baseball. Some of these races getting very, very heated. Reds making a play. The Diamondbacks making a play. Awards. We're going to go around the diamond with our former All-Star second baseman Brett Boone. We'll do that tomorrow beginning at noon. Until then, for Michael Bohm, I'm Chico Borman. For all of us here at Big Play Sports, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody. See you.